All right, so on today's agenda, we'll go over the QUIK-jet AIR and its basic features, the kit configuration, its setup procedure, application procedure, cleaning out your QUIK-jet AIR, quick go over the parts overview and some common adjustments, when to use the QUIK-jet AIR, and some troubleshooting. So the overview of basic features. The QUIK-jet AIR is powered by a compressed air tank that can hold up to 3,000 psi. That's connected to the device by a regulator, which regulates how much air comes out of the bottle or out of the tank at once. It's a precise delivery of 1 to 5 milliliter doses, and it's a single site injection device, so you can only do one injection site at a time, unlike with the IV systems where you can do multiple sites at the same time. The QUIK-jet AIR is self-refilling, so as the piston is pushed back, more product's drawn into the glass barrel, so you don't have to keep refilling the glass barrel yourself. It does it on its own. The bottle that it attaches to for product holds 1 liter. It's a fast product delivery, so with the air pressure, it is able to aid in uptake and actually kind of push the product in a little bit more than the tree can just take it up on its own. It's compact and lightweight. The device itself only weighs a couple pounds. With the air tank, the product, and everything in the canvas bag carrying with all the stuff probably weighs somewhere around 9 to 10 pounds. So still not very heavy. It's a simple operation. It just has that on-off switch. So once everything is set up, it's just turning the switch on and off to get the device going. It's durable, reliable, and one last thing is that when you're calculating your number of injection sites per tree using the QUIK-jet AIR, it's dBH divided by 2. So you take your diameter at breast height, cut that number in half, and that's your number of injection sites. So the configuration, it only comes as the kit. There's no Pro kit, there's no alternate kit, it's just the QUIK-jet AIR kit. As you can see, when you buy the kit, it comes with the air tank, the regulator, a funnel to fill the product bottle, the device itself, 2 Viper needles, a large Allen wrench, which is about I think it's a 1/4 inch in size, and the small Allen wrench, which is about 5/32 in size, maybe 5/64. It's a very small Allen wrench. The pistol handle that can thread into the base of the device to give you a second way to hold it. You get both drill bits, both the drill bit for the number 4 plug and the drill bit for the number 3 plug. The rebuild kit, so you have replacement gaskets and O-rings for every gasket and O-ring that's in the QUIK-jet AIR. A couple needle ream-out tools. You can kind of see those. They're thin pieces of wire with a yellow handle on the back end. The arbor plug setting tool. A pair of safety glasses. Half a liter of CleanJet, so you can already start cleaning your device out. The canvas bag, a kind of like a tackle box looking type kit to hold all your extra pieces, the bag, the product bottle, the cap, the 1/4 inch line, as well as another one of those liter bottles that actually has the bottom cut out of it. A lot of people use that kind of as a sheath for the QUIK-jet AIR. So when you put it back in your bag, you're not putting the device directly on the canvas in case there's any product or gunk on it. It's actually put into some hard plastic so that it keeps your bag clean on the inside. The QUIK-jet AIR setting up is fairly simple, following the steps, starting with attaching the regulator to the bottle. So the regulator just threads on clockwise. So you want to turn it righty-tighty, thread those on there. As soon as it's all the threaded all the way down, the regulator actually opens up the air tank, and you can see the gauge that's on the regulator start to actually rise up to about 80 psi. That's what we send the regulator out of the warehouse at, is 80 psi. To turn the regulator off, you simply just have to do at least one full rotation counterclockwise, or you can thread it all the way off. From there, you're going to want to set up your product bottle. You can either put the cap directly on the bottle that the product comes in if you're going to inject the product neat, so without any kind of water or any mixing. Or if you put it in the actual product bottle, you just simply have to thread it onto that, pour the product in there, and then thread the bottle cap on. After threading it on hand tight, because there's an O-ring actually in the cap, you don't need to wrench it down. When it's threaded on properly and hand tight, kind of like a fuel filter or an oil filter, it simply will create a seal, and you won't have to worry about product leaking out. After the cap is on, you take the long 1/4-inch supply line and insert that all the way into the push connect on the cap. Connecting from there, you want to connect the inline check valve to the product supply line. There are arrows on the inline check valve. You want those arrows to point in the direction of flow, so it should point away from the bottle towards the device. So you take the 1/4-inch supply line coming from the bottle, insert that into the end of the inline check valve that has the back end of the arrow. From there, there is about a 1-foot piece of 1/4-inch tubing that goes from the inline check valve to the device itself. So insert that on the side that has the head of the arrow. And then from there, we're moving on to actually connecting the supply lines to the device. So from there, you want to slide the supply line through the groove in the device, and then inserting it into the 1/4-inch push to connect that is on an elbow coming from the glass barrel housing. After that, your device is completely connected to the supply bottle. From there, you want to attach the regulator to the device. On the regulator, there is a quick disconnect. So you slide the collar back on that end, and then slide that all the way over the male piece on the QUIK-jet AIR body, and then you can let go of the collar and then give it another push together to make sure that it snaps, and the collar should snap back into place. You should actually hear it click, and then also give it a tug back and forth to make sure that the quick disconnect is fully on the device and not going to come off. From that point, your QUIK-jet AIR kit is set up. You can arrange the bottles in that canvas bag however you so choose, so everything fits in there, no problem. After that, you want to make sure that your regulator is open, so finish threading it onto the bottle, or if you have an older regulator, one from early 2017 or older, there is an actual knob on the top that opens and closes the bottle. At that point, you're connected to your regulator, connected to the air tank. Your device is connected to the product bottle. At that point, you are field ready. So going through the application procedure using the QUIK-jet AIR, you have your field ready kit. Now you go up to your tree, you measure its diameter or breast height, calculate the dose using the label from the product. After that, you're going to take your diameter, divide it by 2 to get your number of injection sites, and then you're going to drill, set your plugs, and inject. Special circumstances, so a couple times when you're going to follow a slightly different order of operations from the measuring, drilling, setting your plugs, and then putting your product in. One is with palm trees. Most palm trees only need about one injection site. Their vascular system is set up differently than conifers and deciduous trees, which allows for for mainly one injection site. Sometimes, depending on the variety of palms and the size of their trunk, you might need 2, 3, or upwards of 4 injection sites. But again, that's more palm species specific. So you can always check with your regional tech manager on what palm requires what number of injection sites, and a good recommendation. The other thing is, instead of drilling only an inch or two into the tree, palms usually need to drill about a third of the way in, or at least on the large ones with those standard drill bits, you basically just bottom the drill bit out into the palm. And with the conifers, you want to actually drill, plug, and inject one side at a time, not drill and set your plugs going all the way around the tree and then go back and inject. You want to drill, set your plug, and then inject that site, and then move around the tree doing that. Simply because, especially with resinous conifers, the space that you create behind the plug will backfill with resin, sometimes even within 30 minutes. So you want to just give yourself as much window space in that, with the gap between your plug, behind your plug, to make sure you get the product into the tree. So after you've injected all your trees, you're done for the day. Or if you're switching between products, that's when you want to run some QUIK-jet through it. Again, so cleaning and maintenance, you want to run QUIK-jet through your device at the end of each day and when switching between products. I typically mix my QUIK-jet at about a 1-to-1 ratio with water. Typically, you only need to do about 20 milliliters of that mixture through your device to have it be cleaned out. After that, I do run just straight water through it, just to make sure that there's no isopropyl from the QUIK-jet left in there. Isopropyl alcohol is a drying agent, so it could actually dry out your gaskets and O-rings. So you just don't want to leave it sitting in there. If you leave it in there overnight, that's not really going to cause any issues. If you leave it in there for 2 to 3 days, then you could start possibly compromising your O-rings or gaskets. From there, I usually take the needles out of the device and run the reaming tool through it, just to make sure that there's no gunk or stuff built up in there. And I usually at least wipe down the outside of the glass barrel so I can still see all my lines. Routine maintenance stuff that I typically recommend doing, at least once a week during decent use times. I'll also ask people to do this, every other day, every 2 to 3 days during high use seasons. So for those of you doing emerald ash borer treatments and you're, using this from 7 o'clock in the morning until 5 o'clock at night, you might want to do these types of maintenance routines at the, every other day, maybe even at the end of each day, just to make sure that your device is going to be just ready to grab and go the next morning. And that is lubricating or replacing the piston O-ring. Typically, unless it's the beginning, unless you've had it, winter stored, you just have to re-lubricate the O-ring so that it slides back and forth in the glass barrel neatly. So you take the glass barrel housing off and the glass barrel, and using some 3-in-1 oil, I just usually put a couple drops on it, run it around with my finger so it coats the whole O-ring, and then put the glass barrel and housing all back on, put it back together. I also will put a couple drops on the outside of the male piece of where the quick disconnect goes for the regulator, and also actually around the collar of the quick disconnect, just so the ball bearing stays smooth and I can easily pull it back and get it on, and I know it locks in place, so I don't have to worry about the regulator blowing off the QUIK-jet AIR. This section I'll do this every day when it comes to heavy use times. I'll disconnect my QUIK-jet, my inline check valve from both the tube coming from the bottle and the tube going to the device, and put a couple drops of 3-in-1 oil in both ends. And then with that small Allen wrench, I'll actually insert that from the end at the back end of the arrow and gently push against the spring to expand it like what the device does on its own when it's drawing more product forward, just to make sure that the spring's lubricated and functioning fully, and also the gasket in there that creates the seal when you're doing the actual injection is lubricated so it doesn't dry out and not actually function, not actually make that seal. And then I do the same thing with the output check valve. I will take my 3-in-1 oil and after removing the needle, put a couple drops of 3-in-1 oil down the push to connect. That way it lubricates that gasket to make sure that it helps fully seal so that you get a good suction when you're pulling product in from the bottle. Parts and adjustment. This sheet is actually on the website. It's on the QUIK-jet AIR page titled the Exploded View and Parts List. So if you ever did need to reorder parts, you can go to the website and use these part numbers to contact your local distributor. Most of these parts they know almost by heart. Cheryl, the online distributors have these parts listed out individually as well. But again, you can find this on the website. It also helps for when you do take your device apart, when you go back together, you know what part is in what order. The three main parts that aren't pictured in that are the compressed air tank, which you can order backups for if you want to, make sure you have a full air tank on you at all times. The regulator and supply line, and also the supply bottle and cap. The supply bottle and cap come as one part. Common adjustments, so things that you should know how to adjust on the QUIK-jet AIR. Mainly, it's the biggest thing you're going to be concerned with is your dose size. So to change your dose size, you want to adjust the piston that's inside the glass barrel. And to do that, there's a lock washer on the in front of the knob. So you'll loosen that, and then righty-tighty, lefty-loosey. So turning the larger knob with the red arrow pointing to it, turning that clockwise will push the piston forward, reducing the size of your dose, and turning it counterclockwise will pull it back, increasing the size of your dose. So when it comes to doing AceJet or Imajet applications, most of the time AceJet with this device is going to be 9 milliliters per injection site. So you could set your device to 4.5 milliliters and run the device twice per injection site. With things like Triage or G4, if you're trying to put 10 milliliters per injection site, you can set it to 5 and run 2 5-milliliter shots in there. So things to think about when you're going to do your actual injection. Less common adjustments are mainly just adjusting the pressure coming from the regulator. Now again, regulator leaves the Arborjet warehouse at 80 psi. That's right in the middle of its functioning. Anything below 40 psi is actually not going to be enough pressure to move the piston in the device, and anything over 120 you're getting outside of the safety range. One, for the regulator itself, and then second, you're starting to get to a point where you might be using too much pressure that a tree can handle. So again, we send it out at 80 psi. I typically recommend people not to mess with it. If you get up too high, there's a safety a regulator blow off on the regulators that if you try to crank it over 120 psi, it's going to actually just start letting air blow out of your tank and not actually function. And then if you go below 40 again, you're not actually going to be able to compress the spring inside the body to move the piston forward. But in case you do want to adjust on the old regulators, there is a set screw or an Allen screw in the back that you can slip that Allen wrench into. Turning it to the right or clockwise increases pressure. Turning it to the left or counterclockwise decreases your pressure. With the new regulators, it's right on the top. You can see looking straight down onto the bottle, it's right there. You can see the plus sign, that arrow points clockwise, the minus sign with an arrow pointing counterclockwise. One other thing with new regulators, you can actually make the adjustments with the regulator on and live. The old regulators, you want to do any kind of adjustments with it off, with the air tank turned off and the regulator depressurized. So when it comes to troubleshooting your QUIK-jet AIR, the most common issues are your device won't prime, the liquid moves in the wrong direction, so it moves backwards towards the product bottle and not into the tree, or there are large air pockets in the delivery chamber or the glass barrel. All those lead to either one of your check valves being stuck open or stuck closed, depends on which inline check valve. Regardless of if it's stuck open or closed, your solution is still the same. You want to remove the check valve from the device, lubricate it, and using that Allen wrench you want to free the spring so that it opens and closes smoothly. On tough ones, you can actually soak it in diluted QUIK-jet overnight. That'll break up any kind of grime that's stuck on there. Again, 24 hours isn't going to ruin your gaskets. It's not going to do anything with the isopropyl to your gaskets or your O-rings, but if you don't want to soak it any longer than that. So, just put it in there when you're done for the day, and then grab it and take it out and rinse it with water when you come back in the morning. But again, if it's, the device won't prime or the liquid's going the wrong direction, you want to take the device off, grab your 3-in-1 oil, lubricate the device using that 3-in-1 oil and the Allen wrench to loosen the spring and make sure it slides fully back and forth. And then you can go ahead and put it back on and it should function. So again, more troubleshooting. Problem, device won't fire. So meaning that the piston doesn't move in the device, so you're not actually moving the piston through the glass barrel. You want to make sure, is there air in the tank? If there isn't, you want to make sure you go get it refilled, max of 3,000 psi. And again, it's air. It's not compressed CO2. It's not compressed nitrogen. It's just compressed air. So don't try to put anything else in there. The bottle's not rated for it. Is the regulator fully attached to the device? Maybe the quick disconnect isn't actually fully on there, in which case it's not letting air out of the air tank and into the device. Maybe the regulator is not completely on the tank, so make sure that it's threaded down tightly and that your regulator is set between 40 and 120 psi. Maybe the problem is the device won't deliver product, meaning that the product's not moving through the needle into the tree. Maybe it's going back down into the product bottle. Maybe the device isn't actually pulling product into the glass barrel. With those, you want to check your inline and output check valves. Usually if the product's getting pushed back down, that means your inline check valve's stuck open. If your device isn't actually pulling product at all, either your inline check valve is stuck closed or your output check valve is stuck open. Again, either way, the solution is to lubricate and free it up using that Allen wrench. Again, if you take care of it and do those, once a day, every other day during the high use season, and then gradually backing off. But if you keep your check valves lubricated, you shouldn't run into those problems. And again, if the device won't deliver product, maybe your regulator is set too low. And then the last kind of troubleshooting problem, product leaking from needle. And by leaking, I mean you've done your injections, you take the needle out of the plug, and it's slowly but continuously dripping from the device. More than likely, your check valve is your output check valve is stuck open, meaning that it's not actually creating a seal, and that you have an open line. So that if you turned it and hung it upside down with the needle pointing to the ground, the product would actually still drip through the check valve into the needle. Or the needle might not actually be set all the way in the push to connect, and it's actually building up a small reservoir in that push to connect. So make sure that the needle's shoved all the way in there. When to use your QUIK-jet AIR, best conditions for QUIK-jet AIR. It is our most versatile piece of equipment. It's good for small and medium volume injections. So by that I mean anywhere up to 50 milliliters per injection site. That's a lot of milliliters per injection site to use with a one injection site tool, meaning you can do 5 milliliters at most per shot with the QUIK-jet AIR. So you're doing 10 shots. Depending on the vascular system of your tree, that can be no problem. I wouldn't recommend doing that with a conifer. But an ash tree or any type of ring porous tree, you can certainly do that. Anything larger than or more volume of product than that, you're going to want to look at using an IV system. Otherwise, you're going to be standing at that tree for a long time. Products to use with the QUIK-jet AIR, all of them. You can use them all. That's the nice thing about it, because you can go from small or low volume formulations or undiluted formulations, meaning our insecticides where you can inject them neat, up to and including our disease control and our fertilizers. So especially if you're doing a set of products into a tree, you can reduce the amount that you need to dilute your fungicide or fertilizers by. So if you had to do a triage and a propofol injection into the same tree, you don't want to actually mix those products into the product bottle, but you can inject one and then inject the other back to back. So you can do the whole tree with triage and then the whole tree with propofol. I just typically don't recommend mixing them in the same. If you want, you can always jar test, so take a little bit of each product, put it in a glass jar, see if it plays well with each other. From what we've seen, triage and triage G4 does mix nicely with propofol. But again, just to make sure that something doesn't happen while you're in the field, we don't usually recommend doing that. So to quickly go through a sample application, this is to mainly help you understand getting the correct number of injection sites. We're going to go through a quick example using the QUIK-jet AIR on an ash tree that's 24 inches in diameter, using G4 for EAB treatment. And again, the product is Triage G4, so you want to make sure you have your label with you. The medium rate, so taking for your number of injection sites, you want to take your diameter at breast height, divide it by 2, in which case this is 24 divided by 2, so that's 12 injection sites. And then you're going to want to go around and set your drill and set your plugs around the tree. And then at the medium rate, I'm going to use 5 milliliters per inch. So that turns into 120 milliliters, which does fall right in the center of the medium rate for EAB on G4. And that turns into 10 milliliters per injection site. So again, the thing I really want you to take home from The example here is that it's your dVH divided by 2 when you're using the QUIK-jet AIR. So with that, we can open it up to questions. There is the comic book chat box if you want to type in your question, or again, if you want to just ask your question out loud, you can type that you have a question and I can help you unmute your phone.